Hello friends, welcome to UGC EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Lubna Siddiqui, Assistant Professor, Department of Geography, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. Today I am going to discuss about the module Future of Our Cities, which comes under the paper Urban Geography. Now, introduction. Currently, more than half of the world population is living in the cities and towns, and it is expected to grow by 75% by 2050. Developed countries have already attained a very high level of urbanization, while in the developing countries, more than half of the populations are still living in the villages. However, as compared to the developed countries, rates of growth of urbanization are very high in developing countries, and it has been projected that in the coming decades, most of the population which will be added to the urban net will come from developing countries. While growth rates of urbanization in developing countries are comparatively higher, it is interesting to note that not all the urban centers are growing in high pace, rather only large cities are growing faster. As a result, distribution of urban population in the developing countries is skewed towards the large cities. In 1950, there was only one city, that is New York, with more than 10 million population, and currently, according to 2015, 21 such cities, of which 18 are from developing countries. Along with the city growth in developing countries' economy is also increasingly concentrating in the cities. Like other developing countries, in India too, large cities are growing faster, although the rate of growth has been declining since the last 3 decades, and more and increasingly larger proportion of urban population are concentrating in a handful of large cities. In 1951, there were only 5 million plus cities in India, which have increased to 53 in 2011, which account for 43% of total urban population. In this backdrop of comparatively rapid rates of population concentration in the cities of South as well as in Indian cities, following questions are worthy to discuss in detail. How long the cities will continue to grow? If cities keep on growing, will they cater the demand of the city poor and lower middle class who constitute bulk of the city's population? What would be the spatial form of the large cities? What are the issues cities likely to confront in the near future due to the changing economic, social, demographic and environmental characteristics? How far the use of natural resources by the cities is sustainable? Now, future of city growth. At the outset, we have discussed about the faster pace of urban growth in the developing countries. However, one should note that the high pace of urban growth or city growth is in comparison to those of the developed countries. From the table 1, it is clear that the rates of urban growth in the last 5 decades have declined considerably, and these will further decline in the future. Up to 1970s, growth rates were fluctuating, but since 1980s, these have been declining steadily. Declining rates of natural increase and net migration are the main drivers of the declining urban growth in the developing world. While with overall progress of society, rate of natural increase of population is expected to decline, rate of migration from rural to urban areas is expected to increase, as Davis 1951 in Kundu and Gupta 2000 page 260 argued. Increase in the level of education, dilution of caste system, emergence of nuclear family structure, delay in marriage, improvement of transport and communication facilities, growth of non-farm activities, etc., increase the rural-urban migration. Liberalization of economy in the developing countries since 1980s was also envisaged to boost the rural-urban migration, as on the one hand, liberalization creates new employment opportunities in the cities as argued by the proponents of liberalization, and on the other hand, it, along with adaptation of structural adjustment programs, that is SAPS, leads to the stagnation of agrarian economy in rural areas as argued by the opponents of liberalization. Fortunately or unfortunately, rate of urban-ward migration has not increased in the past 2-3 decades. Rather, in many cases, it has actually gone down or has remained stagnant. In fact, the policies to restrict the flow of migrants to the cities, such as Hokau system in China, closed city policy in Jakarta, Hokau policy in Vietnam, etc., and deliberated initiatives taken by the governments for the rural development and that of employment for the rural poor, for example, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act in India, rural industrialization in China in 1980s, etc., have curbed the flow of exodus to the cities. As a result, rural-urban migration is losing its dominant control in the growth of city population, and currently city growth is largely driven by the natural increase, according to UN Habitat 2013, page 25. Given this trend, it would not be erroneous to believe that in the near future, growth of cities in developing world be more and more sluggish. Table 1 shows the trends of urban growth, that is average annual exponential growth rates. However, identity of city is not confined within its administrative boundary, rather it extends beyond. Keeping this in view, experts have made a strong case for considering metropolitan region as an urban unit for the metro cities. And if we consider metropolitan region as an unit, the city will continue to grow in the near future, although different parts of the metropolitan region will grow in different pace, and that will depend on the other factors like history of the city and the region, size and age of the main city, nature of economy of the whole region, attitude of local governments towards the poor migrants, etc. Taking the case of Indian metropolis, we can show the complex pattern of their growth and comment on their future growth. However, because of the lack of available data, we confine this analysis with the urban agglomerations of the corresponding metros rather than considering the whole metropolitan regions. As per the table 2, patterns of growth of the urban agglomerations can be conceptualized in 4 ways, of which growing core, growing periphery, and declining core and declining periphery are the 2 major types. Former is more applicable to the small like Agra, Amritsar, Dhanbad, etc., and economically vibrant like Pune, Surat, etc. metropolises, while later is largely associated with the very large metropolises like Mumbai, Kolkata, and Chennai, and those with comparatively stagnant economy like Allahabad, Lucknow, Vijayawada, etc. On the other hand, the urban agglomerations which are characterized by declining core, growing periphery fall somewhere in between the previous 2 extreme category. Another important findings from this table is that growth rates of the cores of all the large metropolises except Bangalore and Pune, which are relatively new in origin. There are 2 major reasons behind this. Firstly, from the old areas of the city core, working age group population is out migrating because of stagnant or declining employment opportunities. as large-scale industries have been shifted from the core. Deterioration of housing stocks, narrow lanes, lack of enough space for car parking, waterlogging during the rains, etc., according to Shaw 2015, page 150. Second, large-scale slum eviction from the cores except in Kolkata, according to Bhan 2009-2014, Bhan and Shivanand 2013, Dupont 2008, Johnson 2014, Mahadevia 2011, Modi 2009, Ramnathan 2005, etc. Table 2 shows the growth rate differentials of core and periphery of metropolitan cities in India. Thus, it is likely that in the near future, the metropolises with C type of growth will graduate to A type and subsequently will move on to the D type of growth, and future growth policy and nature of economy will determine the length of time required for these transitions. Now, future of cities, economy and labor market. Liberalization has made way to structural transformation of the urban labor market in the developing world. Earlier, production was labor intensive, now it has become capital intensive, technology based and knowledge based, which result into the huge labor cut in the firms. Large scale old industries are being modernized and in turn labor absorption is declining. Furthermore, large scale firms are on the one hand employing mainly contractual laborers and on the other hand subcontracting their production activities to the small firms located in the rural areas, which are mainly unorganized in nature. In addition to this structural change in the production system, cities are going through the process of deindustrialization as industries have been shifted from the city core to the periphery, which often comes under the jurisdiction of rural panchayats. All these changes have been contributing to the decline in the growth of manufacturing employment in the cities and informalization of workforce. And informal workers are often less paid and neither have job security nor have covered under social security measures. While this is the macro trend of urban labor market, proponents of liberalization argue that liberalization has made way to several new job creations. Indeed, the argument is true, but we should not forget that the newly created jobs are very few in numbers and most of which are for those who are highly educated and well acquainted with technological know-how. For example, Bangalore, the economy of which is considered as direct fallout of liberalization, has less than 10% of its workforce employed in knowledge economy, according to McKinnon in 2011, in Belau 2012. In the era of liberalization, demand for some kind of unskilled workers have also been created, like security guard, housekeeper, waiter, car driver, etc. But as mentioned before, they are poorly paid even though they work for 12 hours or more per day and have no job security. Given this changing pattern of urban labor market, there is remote possibility that unskilled or semi-skilled workers will be absorbed in the organized sectors of employment. On the other hand, according to an estimate according to Kundu 2014, because of demographic dividend, 410 million people would be added in the labor force by 2050. Importantly, majority of this additional labor force would come from rural areas, and it is not likely they would be absorbed in the primary sector because of very low or no marginal productivity of labor in that sector. As a result, it would not be erroneous to believe that majority of that additional labor force would migrate to the cities, as scope for employment in the small and medium towns is limited in search of employment and would be self-employed in the low productive informal sectors. Growing proportion of self-employment is the indication of that. At this juncture, India has much to learn from China. In China, following the liberalization of economy in 1978, employments have increased considerably in the manufacturing sector, which is the major receptor of the rural-urban migrants. Widespread rural industrialization, that is township and village enterprises TVEs, made this possible. As a result, employments in the TVEs were increased from 28 million in 1978 to 135 million in 1996 according to Thomas 2012. Consequently, numbers of towns have also risen to 7,168 in 1984 from 2,968 in 1983 and 19,555 in 2011 according to NBS 2002 cited in Shen 2006. On the contrary, in India, in the post-liberalization period, that is from 1993-94 to 2009-10, only 10.64% of newly created non-farm employment were from manufacturing sector, and employment in manufacturing sector fell by 11% in the 1990s, and even the absolute numbers of employees in this sector declined by 5 million in the later part of the last decade, that is 2000, according to Thomas 2012. In this backdrop, around 3,000 new towns were emerged in 2011, which were, unlike China, guided by the agrarian distress-driven increase of non-farm employment in the villages, according to Guin 2015, Guin and Das 2015, Mitra and Kumar 2015. Thus, there is a remote possibility that these new urban centers will help to provide employment to the additional labor force that will be added by 2050. Hence, policies and programs should be adopted to create employment opportunities in these new towns as well as other small and medium towns. Otherwise, migration of this future labor force to the cities will make the cities over-urbanized. Now, future demographic structure of the cities. With respect to the future demographic structure of the cities, there are two important issues of concern: demographic dividend and population aging. Former has already been discussed and the latter is discussed here. Because of fast decline in the age-specific death rates at the age 60 and beyond, there are rapid concentration of aged population. In addition to falling death rates, declining birth rates also contributes to the relative concentration of the aged in the population of a given country. From the table 3, it may be seen that the countries where population aging percentage of aged population is 7% appeared in the second half of 20th century. It has grown or has been growing much faster than the countries where it appeared before Second World War. Thus, in India, although currently as of 2010 only 7% of population are aged population, it will double by 2045 as shown in figure 3. Table 3 shows the speed of aging in some selected countries. While this is the scenario of the whole country, in the cities, the issue of population aging, that is the percentage of aged population, is much more pronounced because both the age-specific death rates for old age and birth rates are comparatively lower here. For example, in West Bengal, percentage of aged population is as of 2001 7.1, while in Kolkata it is 9.9% according to Das and Bhusan 2015. Again, in the inner wards of Kolkata Municipal Corporation, the percentage is even higher because working age population leave the inner city in search of better job and lifestyle according to Shaw 2015. Therefore, it is obvious that in the near future, the issues related to the aged population like the diseases occur in old age, pension, etc. will be aggravated. Apart from these general problems, the unique problem to the senile population in the cities is that they are left alone in the house as working age members of the family live in other places, that is in other city or in different location of the same city with their children and a spouse. In such circumstance, caring of the old age persons is a major issue. While the old age persons belong to well-off families manage to avail the service of caring by paying to the private service providers, old ages persons from poor families unable to afford such services. A recent study conducted by Help Age India in 2008 in the 8 cities of India finds that while around 30% elderly suffer from chronic diseases like arthritis, hypertension and diabetes, only 13% of them, that is total elderly, have health insurance, and this 13% belong to the upper echelon of the society, and less than 1/3 of the elderly avail pensions or support of any kind. The study also reveals that social security, free medical services, free public transportation, love and respect from younger ones, and club or old age homes are some of the areas prioritized by the elderly. They also want yoga and meditation facility, religious discourses, facility of library and indoor games, etc. Thus, in the near future, governments and non-government organizations should intervene in these areas with utmost priority to make the life of millions of elderly happy. Now, future of cities environment. As more and more population and wealth are concentrating in the cities, their footprints are also increasing, and in turn, question on the quality of cities environment is arising among the urban environmentalists. Here, quality of environment means quality of air, water, etc. in the cities. In this regard, several initiatives like low carbon cities, green building, green economy are being taken, albeit in piecemeal basis, but environmental resources are still depleting rapidly. As a result, in most of the cities of both developed and developing countries, environmental resources are running out of demand, and given the business as usual policy, they will continue to do so in the future. Not only the quantity of the resources is reducing, but also quality of the same is deteriorating according to figure 4. Table 4 shows the air quality in the major Indian cities. Direct impact of city growth is the air pollution. From the table 4, it is clear that in India, concentration of SPM in most of the cities is higher than the permissible limit, that is National Ambient Air Quality Standards. Direct effect of high SPM concentration in the air is asthma, bronchitis, lung cancer, etc. Main reason behind this high concentration of SPM is the vehicular pollution, which contributes 70 to 80% of pollutants present in the air in the large cities of India. As numbers of private vehicles are increasing day by day, concentration of SPM is also increasing simultaneously, and given this trend, it can safely be commented that in the near future, air quality of the cities would be further deteriorated. In different cities, several initiatives such as the use of compressed natural gas in the autos, taxis and buses in Delhi have already been taken to combat the impact of transportation sector in the air pollution, but such initiatives fail to serve the purpose parity because these are piecemeal in nature. Along with such initiatives, increase of private cars should be checked. While most of the countries have imposed several restrictions on the use of private cars in their cities, in India there is no restriction in the use of private cars, according to Sivaramakrishnan 2015. Rather, it encourages the production of diesel cars which are more polluting, according to Mahadevia 2001. As developing countries are adopting the SAPs, they seek to increase the growth of their economy at any cost. As a result, polluting industries are coming up in a big way, and almost all these industrial activities are concentrating in the metropolitan areas, and in turn not only air pollution is occurring in the cities but also rising emission of greenhouse gases, that is GHGs, from the industries is leading to the global warming. According to an estimate of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, by 2010, average global temperature will rise by 40 degrees centigrade, according to Morality and Honorary 2015. Environmentalists believe that this global warming will have huge, far-reaching impact on the cities. Because of global warming, tropical diseases will spread towards the temperate regions. Global warming induced sea level rise will cause submergence of several coastal cities or part of such cities. Extreme atmospheric events like flood, drought, cyclones, cloudburst, etc. will increase in the future, according to Ravi 2008, Sharma and Tomar 2010. From Table 5, it is clear that flooding is a major issue of concern in most of the South Asian cities. Further, increase of this hazard will cause huge loss of life and properties in the near future if serious adaptive measures are not taken. Table 5 shows number of cities in South Asia affected by each of the 4 major hazards. Increasing rates of solid waste generation and their poor management lead to many environmental disorders like bad odor, soil pollution, pollution in the microenvironment, etc. From the Table 6 and 7, it is evident that per capita waste generation increases with the increase of per capita income, according to Table 6, and population size of the cities, according to Table 7. Therefore, it can be said, as cities will grow and wealth concentration rise, more and more solid waste will be generated. Given the rate of 2.7 to 3.5% urban growth per year, waste generation will increase by more than 5%, according to Asnani 2006, page 161, and in the future, within the solid waste, concentration of e-waste will increase, which are highly harmful to the environment. In the absence of landfill sites, dumping of this enormous quantity of solid waste will seriously affect the city's environment in future. Table 6 shows waste generation rates in developing and developed countries. Table 7 shows waste generation per capita in Indian cities. With regard to the city's future environment, quality and availability of water is another major area of concern. It is needless to mention that indiscriminate disposal of industrial and municipal waste in the rivers, and water bodies directly influencing on the quality of urban water. However, in the near future, the availability of water in the cities is under severe threat because of overuse of groundwater, growing construction of high-rise buildings, which lead to dewatering spread of built-up area, which reduces the recharge of groundwater, increasing blockage of lateral flow of water from the riverbed due to construction activities on the riverbed, etc. Already many big cities of India except Kolkata, supply of water from domestic sources is running out of their daily fresh water demand. As a result, they are drawing water from the distant sources, while 5 decades before all these cities were self-sufficient in their water needs. Transportation of water from distant sources not only aggravates wastage of water because of leakage and other things, but also increases the chance of contamination. For example, Delhi draws water from Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh some 300 kilometers away, and unaccounted for water losses are more than 44% according to Revi 2008, page 214. Lastly, with regard to the future of cities, environment, the proposition of environmental Kuznets curve is important to note. According to it, there is an inverted U-shaped relationship between gross national product of a country and its environmental pollution. Thus, increase of per capita income beyond a threshold will lead to decrease the environmental pollution, as stringent environmental rules and regulations would be followed. Therefore, according to this theory, cities of developing countries need not to be worried about their ever deteriorating environment, and as environmental pollution is self-correcting in nature. But this theory has several drawbacks. More often than not, the damages made to the environment are irreversible. Thus, the cities of developing countries should not be allowed to continue to pollute their environment before their per capita income crosses the critical limit. Applicability of the concept itself is questionable in the developing countries, as they have adopted the SAPs, which will resist them to follow stringent environmental rules and regulations. Hence, it is uncertain that the curve will dip at all, even if per capita income rises above the threshold. Now, conclusions. Given the increasing dominance of cities in the share of countries' total population, economy, culture, innovation, etc., it is often said that our cities are future. Here we had made an effort to unfold the future of the cities of India in particular and those of developing countries in general, focusing on the future of cities' growth, economy, demographic structure and environment. The analysis can be summarized as follows. Pace of growth of cities has already slowed down, and in the near future it will decline further. However, taking the advantage of economies of scale in the future, cities will continue to act as engines of economic growth, but there is little hope that the urban poor, working class and unskilled or semi-skilled laborers will be benefited from the economic growth, because the structural transformation of production system under the neoliberal regime goes against these underprivileged groups. Along with the growth of cities, economy and growing concentration of middle class population in the cities, quality of environment in the cities will be deteriorated further, and there would be little possibility of improving cities' environment as long as cities will be following the SAPs. Here it is needless to elaborate that the deteriorated urban environment will affect mostly the urban poor. Apart from these, growing concentration of elderly population will be a new challenge to the cities of developing world, as it demands active involvement of the government in the welfare activities, while the governments of developing countries tend to follow the opposite path under the aegis of SAPs. In response to these future challenges, several cities across the South have already taken several initiatives, but most of such initiatives are being taken in piecemeal way without integrating different sectors of development. As a result, impacts of such initiatives largely remain unfelt in a macro perspective. I hope you have understood the concept of future of our cities. See you next time. Thank you.